So that's where we are. There's going to be discoveries in every closet. There's going to be a discovery as you walk through this new space. And that's a super exciting time. So there's never been, in my opinion, a more exciting time to go into science. Like this like puts the last 100 years to shame.
Oh my goodness. This interview left me more excited and optimistic about the coming paradigm shift into quantum biology than anything has in a really long time. When you listen to the interview, you will understand why. We get into the science of it, and I love a good high-level explanation, and Dr. Lance Becker gave that. He goes over quantum biology in a way that I know is going to be understandable to everybody. We talked about how, according to the new science, we are not just molecules, we are also waves. And he went on to explain what that means scientifically and also the medical implications of that. And why I think this is so important is because Dr. Lance Becker is the chair of emergency medicine at a huge hospital system in the Northeast of the United States. So he's chair of emergency medicine for over 30 hospitals, and he is at the forefront. He has positioned himself at the forefront of supporting a paradigm shift into quantum biology. He set up one of the first conferences on the topic that is inviting people from all different areas, the scientists, the doctors, the business people, the political people, and the public. And he truly believes in getting the public on board. And I said, well, listen, we're right there. We're here. We would love to get on board. Bring us with you. So it was a delightful conversation. It's not often that you see such a visionary change management approach from somebody who's also very deep in the weeds in the science and in the medical system. So I found this to be just so exciting, and also the conversation is also very deeply grounded into the science. So share this with your most skeptical friend. Listen to it lots of times. It's truly, I think we are having like a breakthrough moment. This 2026 is going to be a breakthrough year for this entire paradigm. It is truly, we're on the brink of a new way of understanding human health, which means that all of the people suffering with all of the complex chronic illnesses could possibly be getting improved care from what they are currently receiving in the traditional system. And for those of you who are on the forefront of it and you have not yet joined the certification, jump in. Don't overthink it. Just come on in. We are here to support you for the long term. It's not just a one and done thing. It is an ongoing mechanism of community guidance, support, translating the science into practical and clinical application, and having people around you to talk about it with, so that you're not out on your own. The Institute of Applied Quantum Biology is that bridge in between the science and the clinical application. And it's time. It's the moment. So go to qbcpod.com, click on Institute, fill out the application. I'm very excited to welcome our newest participants, Dr. Jeff Nelson, an osteopathic physician. Welcome. I'd also like to welcome Audrey Shepard, who's in a career transition, retiring and going into the health and wellness field, potentially as an educator. Welcome, Audrey. We're so excited to have you. And then people who, go through this, they come out with a presentation that they can give to their peers, their clients, their potential clients, their patients, their colleagues. And it's amazing to see. So we help you prepare that presentation. And when you get your certification, you have it ready to go. And if you want to come in and present it to us, we love that too. Just last week, AQB certified practitioner Lindsay Ruba did a talk for the QBC free community on losing weight with light instead of GLP-1s. It was super fun. You can watch that. You can watch the recording of it in the QBC free community. And I'm excited to welcome in Julie Shano, Christine Berg, Chelsea Blackbird. They are certified. They've been integrating this material into their various domains of expertise, and they are now moving through to do practice-based research with their work. And we're onboarding a whole bunch of people into that as well. So if you find this exciting and really like, How could you not? It's so cool. If you find this exciting, jump in and join us. Again, that's qbcpod.com. Click on the Institute, fill out the application. I look forward to having a clarity call with you. And before my wonderful interview with Dr. Lance Becker, don't forget to visit our friends at bondcharge.com. Andy and Katie Mant are also coming to the QBC Free community in March to do a live Q&A. If you would like to come to that, make sure you're a member. And also don't forget to download the My Circadian app to track sunsets, sunrises, moonlight, all the things. Lux, it's an amazing app. All right. It's an amazing time to be alive, friends. See you soon. All right, Dr. Lance Becker, welcome to the QBC podcast.
Hey,
this is going to be a fun time.
I hope. I think we'll have some fun today.
You're working on some cool stuff, so I'm looking forward to getting into it. But firstly, tell us a little bit who you are, what your background is.
I have kind of an unusual background. I'm an emergency medicine doctor, and I'm the chair of emergency medicine for the Northwell Health System. It's a big healthcare system with 30 hospitals. But I'm also a scientist, and I run a basic science laboratory. And that is what has kind of like led me down the rabbit hole to quantum biology that I'll talk a little bit about, and sort of my background, because I see people when they're really desperately ill. Sometimes they don't have a pulse. Okay. And my background is in trying to bring people back to life. And so I've worked in this area. It's called cardiac arrest or resuscitation, and it involved things like CPR and defibrillators and drugs and all the kinds of things that happen to people when they're really desperately ill. And so I've tried to approach it both sort of at a high level and at a cellular level. Like, why is it, for example, that we just can't bring somebody who's been dead for a while just back to life? Like, what is the limitation to that? And that was really the question that I started with, going back to when I was at the University of Chicago. And I started a basic science lab, and we started to think about cells, and we started to think about what could we do to, like, maybe we could learn something from cells. And that work led me to some really interesting biology. And it led me to this little organelle that makes energy inside our body called the mitochondria. And mitochondria are sort of having a resurgence of interest right now, because it's increasingly recognized that not only do they make energy, which is like vital. So if you don't have your mitochondria making energy, you will be dead in seconds. All right. But they also do all these other things, and they actually tell our cells kind of the state they're in. So, like, should I live or should I die? Should I stay or should I go? Okay. And all of our cells have that kind of a switch inside them. Should I stay or should I go? And that switch is monitoring our cells all the time. And what we discovered over maybe the last 20 years is that one of the reasons that you can't bring a person back to life if they've been dead for a while is because that switch has gone off. So I began to look at, how do you fix that? And so it has all kinds of things to do with mitochondrial health and mitochondrial behavior, and then mitochondrial action. And so what sort of happened just in the last few years and is that we actually figured out that these mitochondria don't even stay inside a cell all the time. They don't know boundaries. They're sort of like me, that wanders all over the place sometimes in my career, as I've been accused of doing, you can imagine. And they don't stay in the box. Okay. Well, it turns out our mitochondria have the ability to get out of the box and go into another cell. Now, no one yet is even really teaching that in fundamental biology. Certainly not when I went to medical school or graduate school, because that is so new and it is very controversial. And whether it is like for good or for ill, there's all kinds of controversy. And Recently, I was the host of the world's first mitochondrial transplantation conference, because it turns out it looks like it's going to be possible that if you desperately needed a mitochondria for energy, maybe I could slip one into you if I was really smart and give you a brand new working mitochondria. And it turns out that mitochondrial disabilities are fundamental to all kinds of things, to bringing a patient back to life who's almost dead, to pediatric mitochondrial disease, to aging, to dementia, to heart disease, to toxins that we're exposed to, just all kinds of things. Because you can imagine energy is just fundamental to our existence. And so that whole, like, exploring all of that space sort of led me to sort of a kind of an interesting point where so many colleagues said, Lance, you've really got to get into energy now, just energy itself. And that sort of was my down the rabbit hole into quantum biology and quantum behavior. And so maybe just like a little bit of how I think about the quantum world, like,
Yeah.
what do we know about the quantum world? But then I'm not a quantum biologist. So that's the first thing to disclaimer here, So what I think about is when you get down to those little tiny structures, you're going down, you're like below the size of a mitochondria, which is already like a mitochondria is about the limit of what you can see in the microscope, in a light microscope. And so now you get even smaller. And what happens is the world itself, we get very weird. Okay. And by weirdness, I mean quantum weirdness, where the things inside us begin to not just behave like a molecule, like a ping pong ball bouncing around, but they begin to act like a wave. And so once things start to have this duality where it's like, ooh, maybe it's a thing, a particle. Ooh, maybe it's a wave. Okay. Now you've entered the quantum world. And so quantum biology is this growing field that's just kind of exploding, where we're realizing these little things that we looked at for a long, long time and we thought they were just like due to a molecule, they also have the ability to be a wave. And that is weird, okay? And that is quantum weirdness, and that's the world of quantum biology, because we're starting to see that all kinds of reactions going inside of our body are somehow being influenced by both being maybe a particle, but maybe also being a wave at the same time. And that is really, really an eye-opening kind of thing. And so that's kind of how I think of the quantum world. And, it's probably very likely going to be bound up with, disease, with my ability to make a diagnosis on someone, maybe my ability to treat them. Like, maybe I don't always have to give the molecule. Maybe I could give the wave, right?
Right.
So if I can give the wave and do the same thing as giving the molecule, boy, that will be a revolution. And I believe that's the revolution that's coming.
Yes. I hope so. Yes. Well, I mean, it is. It's happening. And so when you talk about giving a molecule or giving a wave, would that be the difference in giving someone a pill versus giving them light therapy?
Exactly. So that might be the difference between having to give them a pill that has all the issues that a pill is going to have versus giving them a photon of light or a wave of an electron or a sound. Okay. That we know that sound is vibrations.
Mm-hmm.
And they travel as waves. And when they get down to that tiny structure, they're called phonons. So now you've got the phonon world where there's these tiny waves that are vibrating things inside our body. And maybe those, and the thing we know about waves, which is so much fun, is they have the ability to sort of collaborate together, or they can interfere with each other. And you can kind of put two waves together and you get a new thing, a new wave. And it's going to be just so important to begin to learn some of that. And we may be able to, for example, diagnose a person who has a disease because, okay, right now what we do is we take their blood and if their blood has maybe some kind of a chemical in it that tips us off about a disease, but all of the reactions along the way to that chemical give off little waves. And so there's little wavelets that are being generated. Yes, our body generates light. Our body generates waves. Some of them are big waves and some of them are small waves. And when those waves are in a certain range, we call it light. We call it the photons that we can perceive. But there are longer ones and there are shorter ones. And it's very likely, since we evolved as little critters on this planet that was being bombarded by the sun with the energy from the sun, that's all coming as waves. Okay. That's like pure waveology coming at you. Okay. And very likely the way we evolved is we probably were smart enough to take advantage of that. And it's probably built right into our hardwiring of our system. And what is, if you will, that right now it's kind of invisible to us. Like we don't see it, but that does not mean that it's not there, that those waves aren't going through us all the time. And in so many ways, we're kind of as much a collection of waves and waveology as we're a collection of chemicals or molecules that we would recognize more. And, at the limits of physics, those two things, they just become kind of interchangeable. And so we have so much to learn and potentially benefit as we open up this area of science.
Whew. Well, I have to say I'm utterly delighted to hear you describing this, and also as from someone who works in a hospital who somehow also was open to going down this rabbit hole. That's a new one. So just to pull it out a little more, so if we're waves, what are the implications of that? You talked about potentially being able to diagnose in a different way than we do now. What would that potentially look like?
It's one of the most exciting things that like literally this stuff just keeps me up at night. Okay. And good question. Honestly, I wouldn't wish my brain on anyone. And it's just like
the universe, so exciting.
Exactly. It's like here at 3 a.m. and I'm like thinking of waves. I think them, So every chemical reaction is driven in one way or another by something that in classical thermodynamics we call a delta G, a difference in energy. So like one molecule, it's got its energy up here. Another molecule has its energy maybe down here. If this molecule changes into this molecule, okay, like glucose would change into from 6 carbons to 2, 3 carbon things. Okay. There's a change in energy. Well, what the physics people have told me, and they said, look, you just can't violate this, Lance, whether you like it or not, is that when you do that change, because there's a difference in the total energy of the system, there's a wave that's given off, or there's a wave that has to go into that and be absorbed. Energy has to be absorbed. So energy is either given off or it's absorbed. And that energy is not just like energy. It's got a name. It's got a note, like the notes on a piano. Maybe it's a C, or maybe it's a D, or maybe it's an A or an A sharp, right? But it has a wavelength. And we know it comes in a little packet, a quanta. So it's got a wavelength and a quanta. And it means that our chemical reactions that are going on by the billions in our body every second, that each one of those they're giving off little bits of energy in the form of waves. And it's not like an option. Do you know what I mean? It's not like, well, maybe I'll I'll keep the waves inside. No, it's like, if you do the reaction, you got to give that off. Like, that's the way physics works. Okay. And so that means now those waves are at a really, really low level. And right now they're invisible to us because they're so low. And there's not a lot of them, but it's very likely that each reaction has its own fingerprint of what waves those are. Because remember, it's not just energy. It's like it's a specific fingerprint to that energy made up of this wavelength. And so an example is infrared light. Sort of red light is about 660 in terms of its wavelength. All right. Blue light, in the 400s, and there's green light, violet light, ultraviolet. So each reaction has to give off its own fingerprint of a wavelength, if you will, a color, a chord, a note. And if we can identify what those are, we could go back and say, oh, that reaction took place. So I know that if a glucose turns into another molecule that has lower energy, it loses this much energy, it has to give off an energetic packet. Well, what if we could measure that packet? And so that's what physicists attempt to do all the time. They're measuring photons, they're measuring energy. And so as we learn to do that in biology, we could even know very specifically, it's possible that there's one little fingerprint that would just let me know that that you have converted a molecule of glucose to 3 carbon fragments. Okay. Well, that would tell me all kinds of things that I can tell from you, and I didn't have to draw any blood. I didn't have to, poke you. I didn't have to chop anything out. It's just there. But somehow I do have to sense it. So we're going to need sensors that, to be honest, we don't have yet. And so that is part of where I think the world is going to go. And if we develop those sensors, it means that rather than you getting your blood sampled, like maybe we could just sample all of the photons coming out of you and be able to make a pretty good guess in terms of what are the chemical reactions that are taking place in your body. And that would be very powerful. And I think we're going to go to that future.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that would completely change the game. And non-invasive and getting much more detailed live, because even with blood, it's like by the time you look at it, it's it's not necessarily the same. Time has passed.
Or
we have to take it somewhere,
right? Or your brain function, right?
Mm.
As your brain is undergoing electrical conduction of signals and thoughts, and all of those things are going. Those are energetics. There must be waves that are kind of associated with that. And you know that there is already a whole field of waveology on the brain called neurology. And there's a thing called an EEG, an electroencephalogram, where you put electrodes on the scalp and you can see the waves that are taking place within the substance of the brain. And we think that those waves reflect sort of large-scale electrical conduction, sort of networks of cell working in unison. However, it's likely that there's even smaller information available at the level of the individual reactions that are going on. So great opportunities for getting insight. And I'll say another thing is, for the people who are sort of just like maybe thinking about this, oh my goodness, there would be something amazing about measuring the energy as opposed to measuring the level of something. So right now, what we do is our measurements, as you said before, they're like static. They're like, call them dead. They're a one-time picture. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how much glucose you have. But if we get down this rabbit hole a little ways, as opposed to knowing here's how much glucose you have, know that, you'll actually know how fast is glucose turning over. So remember that most of our chemicals are like little hamsters on a wheel. They're running around like this in one way or another, meaning they don't just go like this and they don't go like this. They mostly have sort of an equilibrium point. And we think that there are things like diabetes or being septic or having different kinds of conditions where the levels may change, but probably even before that, there are significant changes in the rate of those chemicals being turned over. Okay. And the nice thing about, if you measure the photon that comes off, that tells you that a chemical, not just that the chemical was here, it tells you the reaction and how many times that reaction is taking place. We would learn all kinds of things about physiology if we had that kind of insight.
Right. And it would be like real time and not a snapshot of something that happened.
And as the dumb, dedicated doctor that I am, like, what I want to do is I want to give you a drug and say, is it helping you or not? Well, this might be the fastest way to actually identify that, because
Right.
very, very quickly you'll see a change in that turnover rate. Okay. Like the throughput. Okay. Did the drug that I gave you to treat your condition, did it help you? Well, if I was like measuring the waves that were coming out, I have a feeling that the answer is there. But that is speculation.
I understand.
And like as a responsible scientist, what I really want to do is I want to prove it.
Yeah.
I want to measure it. And that's the horizon that we're looking at right now, because now I think we know just enough to be dangerous. Okay. And I've spent a lot of my life just knowing just enough to be dangerous. And it's really important to now do the research, to do the studies, to do the hard work that it takes to quantify it, to prove it, to measure it. And we don't have great devices. We're going to need some new gizmos. We're going to need new equipment. We're going to need new machinery. We're going to need new.
Well, that was my next question, is like, does technology need to be able to catch up with the science with the waveology in order to make these things reality?
So the quick answer is yes, it does. But I think, like, my guess is we're going to find out that we have the technology, that we've just been kind of lazy, which is we've not applied it to this because maybe we didn't think it. Now, remember this, and I could get some of
That's
this.
true. We could build CERN. We could probably find a way to measure up.
That's what I'm saying is like, look, we got the James Webb telescope that can pick up one photon from like 1 billion light years away. Now, my understanding is that the major component to that telescope is a single photon detector. That is a little wafer that can detect one little infrared photon that hits it. Now, there's a lot of fancy stuff that puts it all together because you got to measure for a long, 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 long time because there's not that many photons coming from one star that's 1 billion light years away. But like we can do that. Imagine if we just turn that telescope around and sort of look inside my brain, assuming that there's something, right? Like, let's keep me around, okay? Now, of course, like that detects one photon at a time. So I don't think it's that we don't have the technology. I think we just haven't had the imagination and the resources and the drive and the cohesiveness to say, this is really, really, really important. Let's get our act together. Okay. Let's have a bunch of physicists who made the James Webb get with a bunch of biologists who were the measure what mitochondria. Let's lock them in a room together until we got to
then figure it out.
And that's really what we should do.
I totally agree. Because, now that you put it that way, it's so true. We have all of this like unbelievable equipment, but because there was no paradigm in physics that included biology, nobody thought to use it that way. And now the quantum biologic paradigm is emerging, which is providing a framework, would you say, to give people some common ground to come together?
And remember, look, scientists are my friends, so I can say this. They are very rigid. They are very conservative. Okay. They are not necessary. They get very comfortable with what they do. And sometimes they're like, well, I'm just going to keep doing what I do because this other new thing with light out here, like I don't even have the right language for it. Okay. I don't, like as a clinician, like how am I going to talk to my patients about photons or something like this and say, oh, maybe it'd be good for you to try some red light out. Maybe it'd be good for you to get some more sunlight. Maybe it'd be good for you to do some of the things that are looking like they have all kinds of interesting health effects for some people. And like I will argue we don't even have a language. And that's always like one of the first things that groups have to do when they come together is they have to like get a common language so they know what the hell they're talking about.
That's true. And I've heard from people who are, I know a lot of citizen researchers or people who work in the wellness space and are just constantly reading papers. And they're like, oh, well, I thought there wasn't research on, structured water, but it turns out half the world calls it something else. I found all this new research on it. I was there because they call it, they use different terminology, but they're kind of talking about the same thing.
That's absolutely correct. And it takes a little bit of bravery, because I'm a academic. Do you know what I mean? Like I grew up at the University of Chicago and then the University of Pennsylvania and got tenure and stuff. And like, they don't really say, hey, bet your whole career on this, crazy idea. Like what they tell you instead when you're young is they say, look, pick a really kind of safe thing to do because you know what? You need to get papers out. You need to get funding for this. There's no funding for photons in biology, okay? Like nobody is going to give you a nickel, probably, if you apply to the NIH for funding on this. And that's true of every brand new field. That's true of mitochondrial transplantation, despite the fact that it's already being used in some people with some amazing results. It's been ridiculously hard to get funding. So you've got to have like that first generation of scientists and of people who will work together. And, like I'm going to like jump to our quantum biology forum for just a moment here to say that the reason that we're bringing everyone together is it takes a community to get the ball rolling. Like we gotta get some stuff together so that it's not so a young person, for me to talk a young person into making this the focus of their career, like I have to be able to look them in the eye and say, you're not endangering your whole ability to have a career in this if you study this area, right? I got to be serious about that. I got to be honest about that. And if they look at me and say, well, geez, Lance, I'm worried. I'm young and I don't have papers like you have. I'm going to be brand new. I'm going to need a job. I'll need to get to a university. I'll need to get some stuff going. Takes a pretty courageous person to overcome that energy hump to get on the other side of that hill. So what we can do as a community of scientists coming together for the quantum biology forum is we can bring that energy down, right? We can make it easier so that a young person can say, this is like some of the craziest, most exciting stuff I've ever heard of. I'm going to go into this field because there's going to be a discovery around every corner. Okay. It's going to be just like being at the very beginning of discovering there were genes. Okay.
Right.
Like, can you imagine, like in the 50s, they discovered there was genes and they discovered there was DNA and all of a sudden, oh my goodness.
Yep.
Okay. So that's where we are. There's going to be discoveries in every closet. There's going to be a discovery as you walk through this new space. And that's a super exciting time. So there's never been, in my opinion, a more exciting time to go into science. Like this like puts the last 100 years to shame. And let me tell you, the last 100 years have seen scientific breakthrough after scientific breakthrough, amazing leaps and bounds and increases in longevity and people living to be 90 and 100. And like, it's not even noteworthy anymore when, 200 years ago, people lived to be 40. Okay. So like we have made some leaps and bounds here, but this maybe even more than all of those.
It's truly astonishing. It is a wild and amazing time to be alive. And I don't know, sometimes I meet people and they're like, oh, this is happening and that's happening. And I'm like, is it? All I know is there is so much cool stuff going on and so many people focused on such like unbelievably mind-blowing, paradigm-changing ideas. You mentioned sunlight and red light therapy. We have a nonprofit for practitioners, and all we do is like translate the research into practical steps. Low risk. We don't want to be dangerous. We're not rolling out anything, but spending more time outside and considering the, helping practitioners and to consider the idea that the environment that their clients and patients are in is in like a way of communication with their bodies. And so if that's true, and we're like, okay, well, let's just pretend it is, like what then how would we proceed?
I mean, I think this is a wonderful space for us to explore. And there's even, because I'm sort of part of this kind of motley crew of quantum biology interested people, and we communicate, there's just some amazing stuff. Like there's a new phrase being termed infrared malnutrition. Now, who would have thought? Like if I had ever said that, like I learned about that months ago. So this is pretty out there, but who would have thought that maybe in our built environment where we live under like one set of lighting a lot, and we kind of like a cave almost, and we're not outside, who would have thought that maybe we're a little malnourished from the wavelengths that we're not getting. And so maybe we either need to get out more or supplement that. So there's all kinds of wonderful information coming out on the near infrared and what it can do for healing and what it can do for energy generation, what it can do for mitochondrial function. It's been shown to have some kind of an effect. And remember, because we're talking about the old wave, that's some kind of quantum biology, okay? There is information out there that certain wavelengths of green light can go into your brain, and it can like reproduce almost the sensation of an anesthetic, it reduces your pain perception. Like, really? Green light be something that people could use to attenuate pain? Now that's crazy. And there's even evidence that ultraviolet light, so that's a little bit smaller wavelength, which means it's higher energy. It has the ability to beat up your cells, smack a cell membrane and bust up. Like ultraviolet can like bang your molecules apart because it has enough energy to cause some damage even. But there's even evidence that people who get some limited exposure to that and keep it within reasonable amounts, like what you would get out walking around, for example, without a sunscreen, okay, that their blood pressure is lower when they're exposed to that kind of an energy. And there are higher rates of blood pressure in individuals who never see the sun compared to people who see the sun. And so, and think of what blood pressure does to our cardiovascular health and our brain health and all of our metabolic health. So, we're just beginning to see, see like photons, to see some of that. But here's what we don't know yet, even with this very interesting information. Like, we don't know, like, well, what's the dosage? Like, how much do you need? And so remember, I talked about that we don't even have a language. Honestly, I don't even know if I'm smart enough to know if somebody said, Lance, you need some more infrared. And I said, well, how much do I need? Like, what would the dosage of that infrared be? Is it like, because it's not time. It's not like you need 15 minutes. There's an actual number of photons per second per square centimeter of skin that has to go into your body at a certain wavelength. Okay. And so we have a ton to figure out, and just think of all this fun research that we can be doing on some of these things. And, I think like one of the biggest questions for the general public is like, well, does this seem like a valuable thing to maybe learn about? And I kind of think this is a really important thing for us to learn about. And so hopefully we will use the next few years to bring a community together and we're trying to build this community through the Quantum Biology Forum, not just with one phenotype. By that, I mean one kind of a person, right?
Yeah.
So not just a scientist. Like, hey, we need some patients to be part of this community. And if you go to our website, you're going to see a very important patient talking about his own disease, his experience. And that has gotten many, many, many views because he is a very well-known actor who has ALS, and he's embarking with some quantum medicine. So he'll be there. You got patients, you got people that give out money, got to have scientists there, got to have clinicians there, you got to have policymakers there, got to have some politicians there. You got to have the people that can make the whole thing move faster, working together, because we have such an opportunity to pick up the pace. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to pick up the pace, okay, of discovery, of the ability to do things. We got to pick up the pace, okay? And I have no doubt, like in an infinite amount of time, we'll figure it all out. You know what I mean? But the difference between figuring out something in 100 years compared to figuring out in the next 5 years is very possible to change that kind of a slope if we work cohesively together, if we collaborate, and if we build the kind of community that will support that.
Oh, Lance, I'm gonna cry.
Don't do that.
No, it's just so, this is weird, but this is just so thrilling to me that you're doing this and that this ecosystem is coming together, that you're recognizing all that you need to weave in all of the different areas. It's not going to just come from an academic silo, which is, I held back from doing interviews with the hardcore scientists. I'm like, oh, who am I? And then I realized, we need people to build that bridge out into all of those different areas if this paradigm shift is truly going to get traction.
Right. I have for my whole career, even going, I started with CPR and better CPR and defibrillators. That's why they're in airports. That was a study that my colleagues and I did so many years ago. And I get the rewards because people actually write me letters. They say, thank you. You saved my uncle's life because of this defibrillator you put in that is a heart restarter. But to do that, it took a community. It wasn't like one person. It doesn't work. It's like a university. And think about just those kinds of things. So the really good question is like, who do we need in the room to make it happen? Who do we need in the room? Yeah. Because I want to get the people in the room and make it happen. Okay. And so if we get the right people in the room, we can make it happen. But it means, there's going to have to be some, bald-headed scientists like me. They're skeptical and hardcore and, blah, blah. But guess what? We're going to need some companies. I haven't seen hardly anything get out to the bedside to get into a patient unless there was some company that had the wherewithal to make it into a thing. Okay? Because if I make the device, it'll look like Frankenstein. Okay. Whereas if a good company makes it, it'll be something that people can use. They can take it right to the bedside and shine this new beam on this person and fix their dementia or their stroke or their ALS or their cardiovascular disease. Like that is what we're talking about doing. Okay. But we got to get a lot of people in the room for that. Okay. So there's got to be the devices. Well, if you've got the scientists and now you've got the devices, well, who else do you need? Guess what? You need a bunch of physicists on this one. Okay.
Yeah.
And just like I'm a biological scientist, like the physicists will hardly even talk to me about this. Now, what's happened in the last few years is it's beginning to really open up. Mm. The physicists in the year 2022, so that's like 4 years ago, they all met and they decided there was a new area of physics, unbeknownst to the rest of us, and it was called biological physics. And that is now as legitimate an area to study as nuclear physics or particle physics. And
fantastic.
It is a new thing that a physicist can go into. So the physics people have recognized that biological physics is quantum biology. Okay. That's what it is. All right.
Okay. So tell me just a little more about the forum you have. Did you just sort of call up people and ask them to come speak? I know you're also accepting applications for people to present. Nick Lane is presenting, and Martin Picard, and Eric Dane, the actor, is coming. So was that you just like pulling it together? And
No. So first, I have to give a lot of credit to my organization, Northwell Health, looking at every possible way we can help people's health. And there's no question that to have something so big and so bold of a future, that major healthcare organizations are going to have to move into this and at least be aware of it. And so we're hosting this because we think it's going to help humanity. But assisting us is United Therapeutics. That's a drug company. It's not a typical drug company. It was started by an amazing pioneer whose TED Talks are inspirational. Her name is Martine Rothblatt. She has her own amazing story, but she was really the person who stepped up and said, we need to have a meeting on this. And this first meeting will actually be at the United Therapeutics headquarters, where they've got the world's largest building that is net carbon neutral. Martine Rothblatt, that's Dr. Rothblatt, is an engineer herself, okay? And is an energy wonk, okay, like me. And is, she kind of got her start in satellite. So sending a message from here to here makes sense to a satellite engineer. So when we talked about the fact that I believe that our mitochondria deep inside us send a message from here out to here where it's received, she had the open-mindedness and foresight to say, this is too important for us to not talk about. It's too important for us to not meet about. And so Northwell and United Therapeutics are doing this together. We're joined by the Guy Foundation out of Europe. And the Guy Foundation has been on this story for at least, I'd say, 7 years. They are ahead of me. They're ahead of most of us. They're thinking about this, and they're a full participant in this.
Oh, fantastic.
And their founder, Dr. Jeffrey Guy, will be one of our keynote speakers at the conference as well. And so there's a community. It's like starting. It's coming. Coming. I can feel it.
It sure is.
Okay. It's like I sort of think of that. We think of our senses. It's like, I think I feel the vibrations from it coming. I think I see at least the smoke starting, maybe not flames yet. It's coming. It's coming. And so, this is going to be the inaugural meeting of this group. It'll be a small, intimate group, but we invite anybody that wants from.
I was going to say, is it open? I saw on the website there's a short application. Is that just open to anyone who'd like to attend, or is it for medical professionals, or how is this?
It is open to anybody, but here's the thing is, we don't have seats for everybody. I'm just straight up about that, okay? Like, we have a limited number of seats, kind of intentionally for this first meeting, because we kind of feel like we all need to start the community. We need to get the process going. We will do future forums that will have the ability to take hundreds, thousands of people. All right. But you got to start kind of the right way. And
keep it focused, tight and focused.
Got to be focused. And we have to build a community that doesn't exist yet. We have to get people to talk with one another who don't normally talk. So we're bringing in physicists and biological scientists and mitochondrial scientists and engineers and patients and policymakers and funders and
Just blowing up all the silos, Lance.
that's what we got to do.
All these brilliant minds are spilling out into the quantum biology forum.
Yep. So and you like, it's going to take a little while to get everything to build that momentum. And so the first meeting will be a landmark because it'll be the first time that the group has come together, and it'll be fabulous fun. I can't wait to hear some of the speakers. You mentioned some of them. Doug Wallace, who essentially discovered mitochondria, is going to be there, and Nick Lane, who's thinking about how did life start on the planet, and Narosha Murugyan, who's thinking about the brain that gives off photons, and Martin Picard, who's thinking about autism and mental kinds of disorders and psychology and what that has to do with energetics of the body. And that's just to name a few. And yes, we've got I'll say a number of people who are into light and the effect of photons in terms of what they can do to physiology. And so we're like, I can't wait. And this is the kind of group that, if we do it right, I believe this kind of group can create a new momentum for the world. And that momentum can start to accelerate our ability to build new knowledge, to figure out stuff, to make discoveries, and to do it faster, and to do it better, and to do it faster. And that's really what the world needs.
Yeah. Well, it's super exciting. And I will also tell you, there is like a grassroots movement of non-scientist citizens who are going to be really excited about this as well. There's, you guys are building up the high level infrastructure, and there's actually quite a lot of us on the ground who are sort of waiting, and some maybe had given up hope that this shift would happen, at the institutional level. So we are all here cheering.
Here's the thing: is this the wrong time to give up hope? Don't even go that way. Don't go to the darkness, my friends. Go to the light.
Go to the light.
Go to the light. Okay.
Yes, because this is just truly exciting. And just to wrap up, I'd love to hear. So you had a traditional medical training. Thank you for the defibrillators, by the way. Last summer on the beach had my training on the AED in the lifeguard hut. So we were all ready to go. That's a major.
Everyone should know how to do that and know how to do CPR. And then now we'll talk about quantum biology.
So coming from traditional medical school, you have the gift of curiosity and an open mind and following where the evidence is leading. What are some of the things that you now understand to be true that were most surprising, even speculative things, compared to what you were taught traditionally? So you already talked about the mitochondria moving around, the mitochondria communicating with the environment. Like, was any of that on your radar before?
No, I mean, just this is all, we're like, there's a lot we don't know about the world. So, I think the most important thing is like, remain humble, like you might think you know a lot, but there's more. There's more out there. I promise you there's more. And so, we can get a hold of some of that. And, I think one of the most amazing things that I learned about mitochondria is that you could intentionally transplant them. Like I now could give you mitochondria to fix potentially an issue. That's a whole field, and that field is just taking off as we speak. Now, the next step is to understand kind of what those mitochondria are doing in terms of their quantum biology. So we're actually going to be talking about mitochondria as your little quantum organelle. Now, I don't even know if that's true, okay? But it is true that your mitochondria cycle the most energy of any spot in your body, okay? So they are cycling energy like crazy, which is to say they are producing a high energy molecule and it gets used up and another high energy and another high energy. And all of that's, so that's why they are sort of the prototypic quantum organelle. And so we'll be talking about them because they're a great model. So this is a great time for us to learn, how does a quantum organelle organize itself? Like, how does it protect itself from too much energy? And how does it put itself together so that the waves, the electrons, the particles, the little charged protons that have little waves as well, like, how do they stay in the right place? How do they know when to go here? How do they know how to go here? All of that makes them like an ideal, as a scientist, I want a model that I can study. Okay. So they're pretty remarkable in that way. And they are going to be this huge therapeutic breakthrough, I think, probably in the next decade. And then as we learn more about what is the actual opportunity for just the energetic side of that equation. So let's appreciate all the wonderful molecules that we learned in biochemistry. Okay. The Krebs cycle, it's the Krebs cycle at the middle, at the heart of biochemistry. Those are all molecules. Boing, 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 boing. But remember, each one of those molecules has some sort of a wave, some sort of an energy associated with it. And we have not figured that out. So what is going to be, if you will, the Krebs cycle? Like, right, everybody learned that awful thing that you had to learn in biochemistry when you memorized all of those molecules. There's going to be an energetic Krebs cycle too, right? With waves. And maybe they work together. Okay? Maybe some of them cancel each other out and diminish it. Maybe they activate other parts of the cell. Maybe the mitochondria, as it's sitting there spitting out photons, which it does all the time, as that mitochondria is sending those signals out, who are you going to call? Okay? Maybe this one goes to the nucleus. And I'm going to call for a new building block, a new protein to be made. Maybe this one is going out to the cell membrane to say, hey, let that molecule out. Let this other molecule in. Open up a channel for me over here. It's very likely that those things are happening inside us all the time. And as we unravel that, that's going to be big.
It's going to change everything.
I think so.
Dr. Becker, thank you so much for being here today. This was delightful. And thank you for the work that you're doing, for transferring all the skills that you learned, rolling out defibrillators in the airport, to creating a quantum biology infrastructure.
Well, listen, I want to thank you and say something that is maybe the most important, which is that none of this works if we don't have people in the community that kind of understand what we're doing and why it's important and where we're going. And sometimes the bald-headed scientists and whatnot, and even the non-bald-headed scientists, sometimes we don't do a good job of explaining what we're really after, what the meaning is, what the impact is going to be. Like, we are guilty as a field of not doing a great job of communicating. And sometimes we can't even communicate with the guy in the next lab from us. Okay. So we are not strong on communication, despite what anybody might say. Okay. And that's where, Meredith, you come in. And that's where members of your community can come in. Because first, they can continue to follow this story. It's like, watch this space, okay? It's going to be exciting. Watch this space. But they can tell the story. They can talk to people who have influence to say, hey, look, like maybe half of what Dr. Becker is saying is not true, but let's figure out which half is right and which half is wrong. Let's do the research and figure it out. We can do that. We can do that. Not just in our lifetime. We can do that in several years if we all work together at it. And if we don't do it, think of how much we give away. Think of what our loss is. So you provide such an important voice so that everybody can understand how important this is and will hopefully be open-minded to the notion that this is worth investigating. This is like why research has value to our country and to our world. And that at a time when some of those values are under attack, when science, good science and truth is under attack, it's really important that we have voices that tell everyone how valuable research is to the world and how valuable it could be to the future of the world, to our children, to our grandchildren, and beyond.
Indeed. Thank you.
So thank you for what you do, Meredith. It's every bit as important as what the rest of us are doing.
But I very, very much appreciate you saying that. Thank you so much, Lance.
This has been the Quantum Biology Collective podcast. To find a practitioner who practices from this point of view, visit our directory at quantumbiologycollective.org. If you are a practitioner, definitely take a look at the Applied Quantum Biology Certification, a 6-week study of the science of the new human health paradigm and its practical application with your patients and clients. We also love to feature graduates of the program on this very podcast. Until next time, the QBC.